Hey everybody, Jonathan Liu here, motivational speaker, coach, and soon to be author. And today I wanted to make a quick video about a question I get asked a lot after I speak and I share my story of how I used to be an ex-drug dealer, ex-gang member, and ex-convict. And that question is, how did you change? What made you decide to change your life around or turn it around? And the answer to that is a little bit complicated, but the first time I really wanted to change was when my house got raided by the police the first time. And it was, I wanted to change, I wanted to do something different, and I just didn't have the resources or the tools. I didn't really know how. I just tried it my way and it didn't really work. And I ended up, I tried to get a job, but I was a felon, and then I ended up just going back to my old ways and getting caught again and just going through that whole cycle again. And it wasn't until 2008 where I found something called Thetahealing that really changed my life. And I haven't really openly shared about Thetahealing really, because then the next question goes into, well, what's Thetahealing, right? And there's no simple answer to that. Thetahealing is a combination of a lot of different elements. It's, it's got meditation, it's digging deep and asking the right questions about yourself. It has a lot to do with belief work, your conscious beliefs, your subconscious beliefs, and it has a lot to do with spirituality. So it's a combination of all these things. And to me, what Thetahealing is, especially at that time, it was a new perspective on life. It was a new understanding of life. Because up until that point, all I knew was drugs, alcohol, gangs, violence, women. That was it. But more importantly, what has Theta done for me? What were the results of it for me? And honestly, I learned a lot from it. One thing that I took away from it in the very, very beginning was that it was okay to express emotions. And this reminds me of the first time that I ever got introduced to it. It was 2008. I had just gotten off parole, and actually I carry this around with me in my wallet all the time. And this is my actual certificate of discharge from parole, right there, September 30th, 2008. This number right here, F57169, that's my inmate number. So once you're incarcerated, that's how they identify you. You become a number. And I remember I got out and I was lost. I did pretty well. I wasn't using as much drugs. I wasn't drinking as much. But right after I got off, I celebrated by going out, getting drunk, getting high. Picked up, quarter pound of marijuana and started getting back into my old ways again. And I was really just lost in life, just getting high every day, watching TV or going out to clubs and bars with different women, and I didn't have a direction, right? And then a couple months after I discharged, it was November of 2008, my mom, she said her friend Joanna was doing, this Thetahealing thing, and asked me if I wanted to go. And I asked, what is it? And she said she didn't know it, but she said that it could help. I said, all right, what do I got to lose? So I went. And after I went, I met Joanna and her son, Derek. Derek was 14 years old at the time, and they started, they introduced me to it. They started talking to me about Thetahealing, and they talked about like brain waves and REM sleep. They talked about muscle testing. For those of you who don't know muscle testing, it's kind of like you've seen people put out their arms and they test yes and test no. It's kind of like a human lie detector test. Talked about past lives and conscious, subconscious beliefs, different things. And all things I wasn't very familiar with, but kind of, I kept an open mind. I was kind of interested. And eventually they just started asking me questions. And throughout like the middle of the session, they got me to talk about a friend of mine, Simon, who was shot and killed 5 years prior to that. And I've never shared that story with anybody aside from my inner circle of friends. And it was, it was very therapeutic for me to, share that story with somebody else, especially someone I didn't know that was very close. And as I shared that story, I felt emotions coming up, and all of a sudden, Joanna's son Derek, right, 14 years old, he says, "Hey John, I think your friend's here, and he has a message for you." And I was like, "What? Like what?" And I don't know, I can't prove that my friend's spirit was there, but I choose to believe that it was, because I felt something. I felt a presence, and and he says, and then Derek says, he's got a message for you. I said, "What's the message?" And these 4 words change my life forever. And he says, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And I just remember like feeling like that emotional lump in your throat, and then just the tears just started streaming, and I just started crying, man. I cried and I cried. And I cried for I thought it was 15 minutes. It was more like 3. And man, after that emotional release, I literally felt like this huge burden, this weight lifted off of my shoulders, and physically it felt like 30 pounds lighter. I saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and I experienced hope again. And it was the first time in a long time I've ever experienced that. So it just totally changed my outlook on life. So the first thing I learned from Theta was it's okay to express emotion. Because in our culture, in our society, we're conditioned to believe that, crying or showing that kind of emotion is considered weak. Especially from a man. And I was in a gang, and, being in prison, you definitely can't cry in there. Only time you're allowed to cry is somebody dies. That's the only okay time to grieve, right? So this was all new to me. So that was the first thing I learned. And then Joanna said at the end of that session, she said she's teaching a class, and if I want to learn it, go on, I can attend. So sure enough, I went. I learned it, and since then, learned about all sorts of different things. But as far as the results were after implementing things into my life, something I tend to overlook is I just naturally stopped wanting to use drugs and alcohol. It was crazy. In my 20s, I thought I'd never give up, weed. Marijuana, that was my favorite thing. I could imagine myself not drinking. I could imagine myself not smoking cigarettes. That was fine. But Mary Jane, no, I'll always be with her. Always. That's what I thought at the time. And just the more I did Theta, the more I practiced, it just naturally, those cravings went away, and eventually I just stopped using it altogether. Same thing with alcohol. I don't really drink that much anymore. So that was really big. And then another thing was I ended up meeting my wife Bridget at one of these healing classes. And that was big, because prior to that I never really had a serious relationship. Nothing that really lasted over 3 months. And she taught me a lot about love, and because we had this Theta healing practice in common, we would work on each other and look at our beliefs about men, about women. Back then I thought women were, only good for one thing, and they were all wanted money, and just all the whole typical male chauvinistic outlook on women. And that changed. I repaired my relationship with my parents, which was crazy, because before we'd get into fights every single day. My mom and I would literally just get into a not a physical but a very verbal argument. We'd yell at each other and we'd be silent and we wouldn't talk to each other. And with my dad, I've gotten into physical brawls with him, and sorry mom and dad, but now it's I've repaired that relationship, and now I call them every day and just tell them I love them and see how their day went, and it's just totally transformed. I ended up graduating college, for the first time, that last year, 2009, 2010, when I was practicing Theta and just looking at things from a different perspective. I finally, for the first time, I went to school for me. Prior to that, I was going to school for my parents and kind of just half-assedly doing things. But that last year, I was like, dude, I really want to graduate, not for anybody else, but for me. And I went in and I graduated college. After college, I got my first job on my own, working at a hotel, right? I wanted to work at a hotel, and before that I would say, hey, well, I've got 2 felonies, nobody's gonna hire me. But going in, I switched that belief, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. And I went in, and sure enough, I got the job. Yeah, just a lot of different things have, come up, and I've, just grown and evolved into the person I am today. And I do owe a lot of credit to Theta Healing. And now I've done a lot of different types of spiritual work, and I don't necessarily just do Theta anymore. It's evolved into something different. I've taken into my own method, and I take what works and I improve, and I just keep going. So I feel very blessed that I got introduced to that. But that's, the answer to that question is Theta really, really helped me, gain the tools that I needed, the resources, and since implementing it, it's really, really transformed my life. And so as a way to give back now, I really want to just share this with other people, both my wife and I. And what we're doing right now is kind of like an early Valentine's gift. I'd like to offer a free session to anybody that's having challenges with maybe it's relationships, whether it's with a spouse or with parents or children or family members, or maybe it's a block from moving forward in their career or their job or whatever it is. I really would love for you to be able to experience something that I experienced. And so for, I guess the next, for the next, let's say 12 people, I'd be honored to do a free session, just a free, you can call it a Theta Healing session, the John Liu Method session, and just experience it for yourself, because I want to give back. I've been kind of holding it down for a long time. I was kind of scared of what people are going to think and this and that, but I think it's time to just, it's helped me. It's made a difference in my life. I believe it can make a difference in yours if you'd like to experience it. So go ahead, if you want to have a free session with me, it's you can email me at John, that's John without the H, so JON at speakingofjohn.com. Once again, that's JON at speakingofjon.com, and just ask for a free session. It's a value of $297. Okay, so it's a great value. Plus, just imagine if you can just, one little block that can transform your entire life. Sometimes it's just one little thing, one little belief. For me, in my first session, it was realizing it's not my fault. It's not your fault. Because I had been holding on to that responsibility, that guilt of my friend dying because he was younger and he was following in my footsteps. Or letting that go really, really transformed my life. So if you want a free session, go ahead and email me at john@speakingofjohn.com. Thank you guys for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye for now.